and I imagine that's what you are. You've probably had a user group come back to you and say, hey, like why and where. So the next step for them would be for them to put together a presentation to council uh, outlining uh, their plan of action on a go-forward basis in the coulees, what they want to do. Because the other group has come and they've made presentations and they're going forward on other things that they want to do, other areas that they want to develop. They're quite active. And the thing is that the majority of users is who we got to go with. Now, somewhere along the way, they've both got to fit in. I fully understand that, but we left open because we made a bylaw we made a bylaw that they could go 64th, they could ride out from 64th out in the coulees that way. You know, and I personally took a lot of flack from the horse riders. You know, because when you're a businessman in this community and a horse rider comes into your business and admonishes you and says you'll never step forth in your business again because he didn't like the decision is kind of unfair to me as a businessman in town that's trying to make the best decision for the whole community. But yet that individual wasn't at the meeting, and he had no plan of attack about how to go forward and where to go from here on in with this here. Because I asked him, I said, well, do you guys have a plan to go forward? Bring us a plan about what you want to do and how you can mediate this situation. No, he didn't have any of that plan. So consequently, you've got one group that's coming with a lot of information, and the other side that couldn't even provide an insurance certificate for us if there was to be an incident, if they were covered. You know, it's those type of things that we took and weighed and you know, and yes, the horse riders need a place. There's no two ways about it. But how do we balance that out? How do we go forward to this here? A presentation has got to be made with some clear lines set forth. You know, and in other communities that I visited, I see horse trails, I see bike trails, and I see and the trails are like when you're going down a pathway, there'll be signs ahead of time, horse crossing at this location, you know, so that when you're coming down, the pathway, you know to watch out for horses crossing on that pathway. And these are the type of things that I, as a counselor, was looking for, some ways that they could blend in, and some of the things that they would do to make their presentation. And one of the questions I asked, I said, you know, a horse, you need separate individual trails for horses. They can't be on the same trails as the bikers. But they didn't have any forthcoming information but they didn't show it to us that night.
So they actually did. When we met with all of these user groups and we listened, when we had this informal meeting, it wasn't a rec board meeting because we didn't want them to feel like they had media sitting here. We wanted them to speak freely and tell exactly what their problems were. We had the three groups. We had the Trail 77, we had the running group, and we had Satra. They all explained what their issues were, what problems they were having. And we all sat there and we all discussed that, you know what, the problem that we're having, because there isn't a lot of horseback riders out there. There is 100% a lot more bike riders out there than there is horseback riders. But I don't think that the horseback riders should not be out there because they're just a small minority. I don't think that that should be the case. The only reason I think that the horseback riders should be out there is if it was unsafe and they couldn't keep up the safety and they weren't maintaining the trails. So those three groups did get together and they had proper etiquette, they had signage. They went and walked the trails and found out which trails the horseback riders could use or couldn't use, because a lot of those trails out there, they can't be used by horseback riders because the weight. And a lot of the trails, a lot was happening where some horseback riders were using a trail after it had rained. Well, it completely wrecks the trail. So then we had said to Sauter, like, this is going to be a lot of you having to educate maybe people who aren't even a part of your group. Just like Trail 77 and the runners are going to have to educate some of the people down there that aren't even a part of their group. But you have to have, it's like telling a police officer to give someone a ticket for not stopping when there was no stop sign there. So we said, like, we got to have rules, regulations, proper etiquette, because I don't ride horses. If I was walking out there and all of a sudden I came up to a horseback rider, well, what's the proper etiquette? Who is to step aside? Who is to not step aside? Okay, if a horse poops, if a dog poops, these were some of the things that we were getting brought up. They hatched them all out. They were able to make this work. Now, if a year from then, if you guys had said, hey, we're enforcing this bylaw, this is not working, 100%. I completely back you guys. Obviously, if they couldn't keep it safe, if they couldn't maintain the trails, yes. But the problem that I had was these user groups were coming together to all try and use a public park. It's not a private park. And they were trying to maintain as many taxpayers to use that park as possible. And it was a community getting together to try and use it. And then all of a sudden a motion was just made and it was done. And that's why we were kind of like, hey, the rec board is trying to be a really working rec board, and we want the user groups to be able to come to us if they have problems or if they have new ideas, anything. I feel now that in the community's eyes, the rec board really isn't that important, because we were working with them and then all of a sudden it really didn't matter. It really didn't matter that these user groups were trying to resolve an issue because council just made a motion anyway. And that's really how we feel.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin.
Actually, I couldn't said any better than what you did there. We asked the groups to come together. We basically said, you guys come up with a plan, you can make it work, we're happy with it, which they did. We had a strong presentation from the Trail 77 group. The horse riders didn't really speak at that meeting, which is sorry that it didn't. But the horses have been out there since Tabor was born, and to take it away from them, I think is very wrong. So I strongly support what you guys are saying, and I think council should really reconsider our decision on that.
The fact that the horses have been out there for hundreds of years, that part really didn't take into any importance to me. It was the fact that this park has been changed. There's different uses to this park. But if we can get all of them to work together safely, that was the key to me. And these user groups did come together, and they told each other their concerns. Like Trail 77 had a huge concern about the maintenance, the wear and tear on their trails. And they should, because they've done an excellent job on making these trails. And Sauter didn't even know they didn't even know that there was being this wear and tear. So they were made aware of. And they said, hey, you know what? If you guys are going out and making new trails, phone us up. We're going to come out there. So we had groups getting together that were trying to come for a common goal. And I just feel like it very much divided, because I'm sure the horse community feel like it was the runners and the bikers that helped persuade this, or vice versa. Like we just want to be a working board and work together with the user groups so that they can come to us. And I just hope that they don't feel like they can't come to us now because of the motion that was made after all of the work that we had been doing with them.
All right, thank you, Councillor Chavez. Just 1 second there, Darcy, please. I'll have you come up in a minute, sure.
So I want to comment on something Councilor Bruin said. He said horses were there first. Well, you got to remember horses were in downtown Main Street, Tabor 2 at one time, and they eventually, and just a minute, let me finish. And you know, eventually the car took over and sidewalks and everything else. But you got to remember now there was a motion at one time that I supported, and so did you, about allowing horses to go through downtown and, you know, and go to the Wendy's and whatever, or not the Wendy's, but Tim Hortons and whatever. And we tried to put that through. And of course, we had a very lively discussion, and that was beat down. We lost that motion, Jack, because it was me and you that was supporting that. We lost that because of all the different considerations about, you know, people not getting along with horses and what should, you know, the consequences of happening this way and that way. So consequently, there was a lively debate previously on the horse issue, allowing them through town. So that's when we made that motion so that they could go from 64th Note out into the coulees. But one other thing that you touched on, and I want to clarify, when council makes a motion, it's abhorrent that the two councillors support that motion. They should have indicated to the Recreation Board in the meeting when it was brought up the reasons why council did that. Now this is 6 months later, and it's, you know, and it's unfortunate, but they should have supported council in that and gave you all the reasons why that was made, because we had a lively discussion there, and it's up to those two councillors to support each other and to make it clear to you the reasons why that motion was made. And apparently there's a miscommunication from our councillors and the rec board where they never communicated all that to you, because they should have. And that's, well, and that's unfortunate, because when the MGA, the Municipal Government Act, states when council makes a decision, council, whether they're in favor of it or not, has to support that. So those two gentlemen should have, at the next meeting, should have made it very clear why and how it was done that way. And that's really unfortunate that they didn't work together to support that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Firth. You want to come forward also?
So just a couple of comments. Comment number one, we did ask, we didn't see a certificate, but Councilor Strobe, as you said, you asked from their insurance. So we did, at the Recreation Board meeting, asked all three groups what their insurance coverage was. And Amanda Malone, who was at that meeting, she's more involved with SATRA, so she knows a little bit more than what Eric Ziegler did. So she did disclose to us that they have like $2 million through SATRA and like another $4 million through the Alberta Trail Riders. So they, out of the three groups, they were the most highly insured group out of them all. I think the next one was 1.5 million. So, so we did ask that, and so, you know, on the liability end, they were covered. Now, Eric Ziegler, he didn't have those numbers, and then after I did have a chat with them, and the other comment, they felt that at that meeting that they weren't really given the opportunity to express their side. They felt that it was more the Trail 77 group got the bulk of the questions asked towards them, and they didn't feel that they were able to explain why it was important to them, what their reasoning was to be there. Because council, you know, and I didn't, you know, I didn't look at that, watch that meeting online, but I'm just going by what he told me. That he felt that they were treated unfairly in a way that they were not given the same opportunity to express their side of the story over top of Trail 77. And so for insurance part, hopefully that group comes back and they actually will, Amanda Malone will show that what they have for insurance, but we did ask that. They are highly insured out of all the groups. That's really all I have.
All right, thank you. I guess I could just clarify a little bit about that. I think Mr. Sigley probably had the least to say of all the groups for whatever reason. But I know there were some direct questions asked about the insurance side, as he indicated, about that. And I think that's all that really he addressed in that particular meeting. Like I said, everybody had the opportunity, but it's more of the questions were, I guess, directed at probably the bike Trail 77 group and or the runners. But he did answer a few questions related to the insurance. I believe he did clarify, if I remember right, that they did have it, but there was nothing, I don't think, on paper, as I recall there. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a comment regarding what Councillor Stravis had said about the horse group not having a plan. And my understanding was that when these three organizations sat down, that was the plan that was made, was how they would cooperate, what the process would be if there was ever a dispute, what the process would be if there was damage on trails. So my understanding is that that was all ironed out already. And my feeling at that time was, and still is that if three groups like that with differing ideas can come together, that we could at least allow them the opportunity to try. And if it doesn't work, then we move forward from there. But to just say, and again, I know that a motion was made by council, and I support the motion, but I still don't necessarily agree with the decision that was made.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering? Okay, all right. I'm just going from memory, but I'm just wondering if we could get Ms. Van Ham possibly to read us the original motion that came out related to the horse decision, the horse users' decision there. If we could get that for clarification. I believe it was a motion made by Councillor Firth. I'm not sure if that's actually in there, but I believe the motion was made by Councillor Firth to allow the horses, and they end up being defeated, if I'm remembering correctly, but I don't think it's right there. So, or just as a clarification, could we get that read back to us? Just
Ms. Van Ham, please, did you hear the mayor's request?
Ms. Sorrow, through to Mayor and Council. I did hear the mayor's request. That will take some time to look up what that motion is through the minutes.
all right. Okay, if it's a little too involved, I guess we won't worry about that today. But I'm just asking for some other help from some council members. Does that sound accurate with what I just said there, Councillor Firth?
Yes, I believe that was correct. So I think the motion, and I don't remember the date, and I don't recall the exact wording of the motion, but I believe I did make the motion and then it was defeated. So I suppose there wasn't necessarily a motion made. It was just that we were not choosing to amend the bylaw, which means that the bylaw would stay in effect.
Yeah, as I recall, and I think it was April, the first meeting in April. The motion was made to allow the horse riders to ride in that area, and with some different wording attached to that, and then it ended up being defeated as a result. So there was no formal motion to say not to, per se, but because it was defeated, that wasn't allowed, and that's what came about, as I recall, was the accurate format. And you know what, to reiterate, I would also echo that it was great to see those three user groups coming together, and it was looking pretty good overall. And I guess maybe it's the communication side that came out in the end, was that insurance side seemed to be a number one question there by more than one counselor at the time. Yeah.
Satra, they were definitely the most insured.
Okay, that's great, and I think Mr. Firth also clarified that, but I guess I don't think that was actually clarified at the time. I think that was part of the issue, as I remember.
Yeah, it had come to us because it was during our informal meeting that's when we had found out that they had more insurance than any
Okay.
of the other user groups.
And also, as I'm recalling, they did have separate trails that they were looking to
Yes.
use
So
and not
then
use, right?
When the
So,
three user groups came together, Satra actually had expressed that they didn't actually really want to use all their trails at all. They
Yeah.
only wanted to use certain main trails, and that was just to access the river bottom.
right.
And so then when Trail 77 and the running group had gotten together with Satra, they went out and they were going to, and this is why we started this back in January, so that it would all be ready for the spring, so we could get signage out and we could teach people the proper etiquette and so that it wasn't just coming out in the middle of the summer when we were having problems. We were trying to get ahead of a problem that they had last summer. And there was going to be designation on certain trails. We were going to have it on trail forks. We had found out that we could actually put on where they could show horseback riders, runners, and bike riders on there.
Okay.
So there was a plan. It wasn't just Satra that just had a plan. It was actually all the user groups had a unified plan on how the
Right,
trails were
right.
going to be used.
So just to reiterate, as far as it's been said tonight, is very accurate. Once the decision's been made, council is obliged to stick by that
Yep.
decision and as per our policies and bylaws. But also, and it can't be brought forward again for a 6-month period. So that puts, if I'm accurate with the April date, that puts them into October to be able to come back to us if there's some more information.
So then we
They
can
could
inform
come
that
back to
user
us as a
group that that's
delegation,
what they can do is come
And
back.
that could potentially happen, yes.
Okay.
Councilor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think actually it takes a majority of council to vote on something if we want to bring it back. If I may be wrong. Mr.
Yeah, that's
Becker, and
right.
Shaker,
That's right. It can be,
it can be.
in that sense, yes.
I'm just very impressed by the job you guys did, all the work you did to bring this to council. And I'm sorry it went the way it did, but I would sure like to see council re-examine this. So
All
I
right.
don't know if there's a formal motion or something I have to make to do that.
Well, I think we're just in the discussion phase right now, Councilor Bruin, but, as I said, that it's basically the rec board's, and or Ms. Hanson's, request to speak to us and have this discussion was exactly what we're doing. So, all right. Councilor Garner?
Yeah, I've listened intently and I'd like to throw in my 2 bits worth. Under section 153 of the MGA, which we all are supposed to abide by, it says that the duties of a councillor are to consider the welfare interests of the municipality as a whole and bring together to the attention anything that would promote the welfare. I base my decision on this whole horse situation strictly and exclusively on the safety aspect of it, because in my world, safety and welfare are kind of bookends. I don't know how many of you took the opportunity to go and take in the, what they call the Old Man Mayhem on the weekend. Did anybody go there? I went down there because they asked me to take photographs. They had over 86 riders from about age 6 to about 72 probably. And they were all over those hills. And I'm just, and I walked around there as I took photographs and I thought to myself, how would horses fit into this mix? And I thought to myself, it would be a catastrophe. And so I want to reiterate that I made and I currently make my decision based solely on the safety factor. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roy.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think Ms. Vanham has that motion ready. Can you read it for us, please, Ms. Vanham?
Yes, Mr. Orwa, through to Mayor and Council. It was moved on the March 22nd meeting by Councillor Firth that council directs administration to update the regulation of parks, boulevards, and sidewalks bylaw A203 to include the trails and the Trail 77 and Tabor Riding Group user agreement, and that the user groups are required to provide proof of insurance. And that was the motion that was defeated at that time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Van Ham. I appreciate that very much. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm somewhat confused as this is probably not even legally or properly before council, this whole discussion, because the 6-month time period has not passed. And under council's procedural bylaw, it takes 2/3 majority of council, not a majority, 2/3 majority, to place it back on the agenda before the expiration of the 6-month period. And I should mention at the Recreation Board that if you guys want information why the decision was made and how the decision was made, look at the March council meeting live stream and you'll find out. Now, I don't know if anybody did that. So, and that's where I left it at. Did I communicate this properly, what council's decision was? Probably not. Probably not. And I apologize for that. But at the same time, my intent was correct. And that I didn't get support from my fellow council disappoints me greatly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Broom.
Thank you, Ms. Beckering, for your statement there. Anyone that, when there's the Old Man River Mayhem, whatever it was called, horses would avoid it. Like, I'm sure as a group, 3 groups together, you have dates planned where this is gonna happen. So the horse riders would avoid it. Like, that comment came out of the air, I think, that, what if I was there and all of a sudden bikers show up? They all know. And by having your group like that, so everyone is informed of what is happening, I think is the key to it. Like, let's let people know what's going on. There's going to be a biking event this weekend. There's going to be a horse riding event this weekend. We're going to do the trail, walking, hiking. Like, that's the advantage of having a group so that people know what's happening out there. So to me, it's I can't say more.
All right, thank you. Yes, that's communication requirement is always key, that's for sure. So the more communication you have, and I think that was happening overall. And so I think if, for any future events like this as an example, certainly that, as Councillor Bruin indicated, would be covered accordingly. And for the most part, common sense also dictates if something like that's going on, of course, you're not gonna go out there right what's in the middle of an event like that. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship, I want to, I'd like to agree with Councillor Beckering because we are touching on an area where we shouldn't be. Because we haven't, and a proper motion wasn't presented to do this here. So I think probably some guidance, perhaps that you should meet with SATRA and you should tell them that they should make a better presentation with all the documentation and everything and come back to council. So they'll have to come back again later this fall sometime, but that would be the next step because, we have to live by this motion and Councillor Beckering is right. We're discussing something, we have the motion read that we shouldn't be doing. We've kind of crossed that line that we have. We
Explaining to us a motion that we had asked in Rec Board and never got an answer to, and that's a lot of why we're here as well.
Yeah, and actually to clarify, we did have this discussion at the agenda setting, myself and Councillor Stravos with our administration team. And this did come up and it was decided that because you had a motion at the rec board level and it was your ask to speak to us, it wasn't a councillor bringing this up individually. So I guess Councillor Beckering or Councillor Stravos isn't wrong entirely to me, but I think we were trying to give the rec board the benefit of the doubt to have this opportunity and accommodate accordingly to have a really positive discussion and move forward. Councillor Stravos?
So I'll just finish up now then. So if you go back to SATRA and you get that information and have them come back with another presentation, council will look at it down the road because obviously there's some miscommunication and it's unfortunate, but it's in the past now, so we can only build from the future.
Is there a way that we can keep better communication between the rec board and council? Like, was there something that rec board could have done to be able to inform you guys any better? Like, should we be able to put on your guys' template where there is a communications with volunteer boards where we can come to you and discuss anything that is going on with the board so that you guys are better informed?
Well, I think probably the problem was the two counselors weren't communicating with each other. And that was a real problem because they should have backed each other up in that meeting about what was going and what was happening. And that would have been the communication piece that you were missing because apparently they were at odds with each other in that meeting. And that's against council code. They have to support each other, and apparently that's not what happened, and that's really unfortunate.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put a timeline or deadline on when they come to council, because I don't think we meet until August, right? No, July, August, middle of August. And our suggestion is, because the recreation board plays such a big part in the town of Tabor, perhaps we could add it to the department reports from the rec board, so we know what's happening as well. Because you guys have some really great plans and some good ideas. And I think if we could share it with council, that would be important. So I'm suggesting perhaps we add that to our department reports, report from the recreation committee.
All right, thank you, Councillor Strauss.
Well, Councillor Bruin, you got my ire up with that one because I specifically brought a motion up in a previous meeting that councillors provide written reports, what's happening in their, a little worked up now, in their committees. And you guys voted it down because you guys didn't want to feel that you should have to do a written report. The MD does that, we don't.
Joe,
All right,
I'm
thank you,
sorry I
Councillor.
didn't support you on that motion, but it's a great idea. I think if we do this with the traffic committee and everything else, we should have reports every meeting when the committees make a decision, so.
Well, it can still be done if we decide that in the future, absolutely. But we're not going to accomplish anything by arguing about it tonight. So with that, I thank you so much for your presentation. I thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion, and I look forward to more positives going forward as well. So thank you very much. All right, can we get a motion to accept the presentation for information, please? Councillor Bruin.
I make a motion that we accept the recreation board's information as presented.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item 7.2, Tabor Minor Hockey Association Delegation. Request for support, Mr. Irwa.
Yes, I think we do have the delegation here. I think they're just outside there. They should be coming in shortly.
Good evening.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think we do have the delegation here from Tabor Minor Hockey Association with their request for support. So please just take over and proceed.
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen. You just need to push that mic button when you're speaking.
Okay, so yeah, good evening. Thanks for having us. Danny and I are here to request a refund for the 2020-2021 advertising lease agreement. Tabor Minor Hockey bases our registration fees completely on ice time, both practice and game times, insurance fees and officiating expenses. All other costs that we incur for the year rely on fundraising. Our biggest fundraisers are hosting tournaments, selling 50-50 at our games, and our AGLC casino events. Our association obviously wasn't able to host any of those activities this past year for a sum loss for last season of $32,000. Alternatively, we ran two other fundraising activities throughout the last winter to try to make up for that fact, and we were able to net $8,500. So we're still down quite a bit. Our net loss for our full season for our association was $25,000. So some typical expenses for our association that aren't covered in our registration fees: team official training requirements. There's numerous courses and training requirements that our coaches and managers have to have. The association pays for those. We don't expect them to pay for that themselves. Equipment such as jerseys and pucks and all that kind of good stuff. And then we also do a coach mentorship program, which this year, as you can see, we cut the dollars for that. The year before we had spent 12,000, and this year we spent 6. From the request for decision document, you can also see that our advertising revenue was down significantly, down from 22,000 to 15,000. The lease agreement fee usually represents about 35% of our advertising revenue, but this past year that number increases to 55%. You also see that we were asked to reduce fees by some advertisers, and that some of our other advertisers have mentioned that they didn't receive very good value for their advertising dollar this past year. Our season, and subsequently our advertising season, usually begins at the beginning of September and ends at the end of March, with really no restrictions on capacity to the facility other than normal fire code, which we never hit that kind of people in the facility. This past year, the arena was open normally at the very beginning up until the end of November, with only 100 fans allowed in attendance. And then it was shut down at the end of November, and we were allowed back in at the beginning of February for the months of February and March, with no fans in attendance. So you can see that our advertisers really didn't get very good value for their money. While we know many of our advertisers consider that to be those fees to be a complete sponsorship and a donation to our organization, we as an association fully expect a request from some of those advertisers for a reduction in their fees for the upcoming year to make up for last year. That's kind of the information I had prepared for you. If you guys have any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like, I'm full support of the hockey program we have in town here. With the advertisers saying that they didn't get their place to advertise as much as they wanted to. It would show a lot this year if they came out and bought their same ads again, stating that we supported you through the COVID and all that. So I think that would be a bonus for them if it did follow through with advertising. So you're asking for basically $7,700, and that would clear off 2021 season, right? So then you guys would be on a clean slate going into the next hockey season.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We were thinking that with the reduction from last year, plus our expected reduction from requests for a reduced fee for next year, if we requested a full refund of the 2020-2021 season, that would set us up for our next season to it would balance out, and we'd be good.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you. If you could just clarify for me, what is the process of the advertising agreement with the town in Taber Minor Hockey? So is all of the advertising revenue that you guys get from selling advertisements on the boards and on the sides of the Zamboni, does that all go to Taber Minor Hockey?
Yes, with the exception of the 77.75 plus GST that we pay the town of Taber, which represents 20% of the full amount we would be able to bring in. It's what's available. We've never been able to sell 100% of what's available. We're usually in that 22 to 25,000. If you work out the math, it would be about 38,000 we'd have to sell. We've never been able to do that as a volunteer group. We'd almost need to hire someone to do that. So we've never been able to. So that's why I say typically it's 35% of our revenue, and this year it's 55.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to make a motion that council provides Taber Minor Hockey with a full reimbursement of the 2020-2021 season lease fees, with $5,810 coming from the council discretionary fund and $1,965 GST coming from operating reserves.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chavez?
Yes, Your Worship, I don't think we've had adequate time to debate this, and we got a motion going forth. I mean, we've already taken that money in. Perhaps there's a better way to do this, is to discount your fees for next year, because this is a budgetary item that we can, because we're going through the process now and doing our budget. So maybe we could incorporate this into next year's budget rather than giving you a refund on last year. How do you, I just want to carry on this question here with these gentlemen, but how do you feel about going that way rather than a refund?
That would be just fine with our organization. It really wouldn't make a difference to us either way.
Well, the reason being is because we're doing our budget now, and then we can do our operating budget. We've got recreation here; they can build that in. But we're kind of going backwards at this point. Pulling money out of here and out of there, the money that is designated for other areas and whatnot. If you can make it through till September till you start getting some revenue back in, I think that would work better for council rather than issuing you a refund. That would be my perspective on it. So,
All right, I think Mr. Roy may have something to add to that, to clarify one way or the other.
No, sorry, I was just going to bring up the budget issue as well. But the other thing that I wanted also to bring to your attention before the vote was the amounts that were read. Now, initially, when we had the 5,800 remaining in the council discretionary fund, we had not factored in, the other commitments. We had committed some amount through council motion resolution on the ambassador stuff that we had, and that amount has not been factored in. So looking at my spreadsheet tracking council discretionary fund, we only have about 4,300. That is 4,310. So if we were to go that route, then it will only be about 4,310 from council discretionary fund, then the difference about 3,400 from the reserves. But I wanted to give it a twist to the budget, to factor it in the budget, future budget, but I think Councillor Strovas beat me to that. So it depends on council's direction.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you. To me, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I mean, at the end of the day, you guys get, and I'm not opposed to the motion, but have you heard from your advertisers that they will be requesting a refund?
We've heard from 2 that have not made formal requests, but have mentioned that they did not receive very good value and that they were thinking of asking for a reduction, that there was no formal request. That's as far as it's gone. Our assumption is that we will get that request when we start hitting these advertisers for the fall. We will be getting that request at that time.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation, and Mr. Planger and Mr. Rumford. Good presentation, very lucid and clear. And I also am of the opinion that we should put this into the budget of next year. And if you're happy with that, I would certainly support that. At the same time, there is a motion before us, Mr. Mayor, that we have to decide on. And for you 2 gentlemen, it does not matter to you, is that correct? As long as you get the $7,575 from somewhere.
That's correct.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, I'm absolutely supportive of this 100% also, and whatever best way to accommodate your request there. It's a very good presentation overall, and very much needed with the tough year we've had, right? So more than a reasonable ask for sure. So with that, Councillor Bruin, you do have a motion on the table. However, as Mr. Rowe indicated, the figures aren't exactly accurate, unbeknown to us as council previous. But he's filled us in accordingly. So either we go that route with your amendment to the figures to total the 7785 through the council discretionary fund and or the reserve funds, or you withdraw that motion and we look at doing another motion with what Councillor Stravas and or Councillor Beckering was indicating for the user fees reduction. So, yep, Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I still stand by my motion. I'd like you guys to go into the next year with a clean slate. The numbers have adjusted now to $4,310, and I'm not sure what the GST was at, but I think let's do this, get it done, it's behind us, and you guys have a whole new year ahead of you. And I really think this is a no-brainer. Like Councillor Firth says, it's 6-1, half dozen the other. Do it now or do it later. Do it now, we'll get everything passed. You know what you're going into the next year, and I stand behind my motion.
All right, well, just to help you out for the figures here, Councilor Bruin, it would be 4310 from the council discretionary fund, and 3465, I believe, adds up to the 7775. Is that accurate? All right, so if you like to follow through with those figures, we will go forward with that.
Okay,
portion of the
I
motion.
can add. Would you like me to add that to the motion then?
To be accurate, as per Mr. Orwa's
Okay.
clarification.
Mr. Mayor, if I may amend my motion, I guess, we take $4,310 from the council discretionary fund and $3,400,
3465.
$3,465, even from capital reserves.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion on the table.
Operating reserves, sorry.
We do have a amended motion on the table, and Councillor Garner had a question. You're good. Councillor Becker had a question? All right, we do have an amended motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Councillor Stravas.
Your worship, I'll make the motion that the council directs administration to incorporate the $7,775 plus GST in the 2020 operating budget.
All right, just for clarification, does that clarify in the user fees? I believe it has to be an indication of the user fees for our minor hockey association. Mr. Roy?
The 2020 or 2022 budget?
So it would go to next year's budget, which would be 2022. And that's the request is for the 7,775 plus GST. This way, council still has its discretionary fund, and then we can work it into next year's budget, which makes more sense for all of us.
But I'm just looking for some clarification, Councillor Stravas, on where that money is going and what it's going to.
Well,
The reduction in user fees specifically for the minor hockey association.
Sorry, the button. The request then is to cover their advertising user fees, I believe. So if you need that amended into the advertising user fees, I'll put that in there then.
All right, and just to clarify, as administration, does that have that covered completely with what the ask is here from our gentleman delegation?
Expecting them to pay the amount in question, then we'll have to adjust our budget accordingly as per the council resolution.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Bruin?
I'm sorry, that motion makes no sense to me. I read the motion to pay it, be it done. Now you want to delay it to next year's budget. To me, it makes no sense. So I will not support your motion. Because we had a motion that would have covered it. We had the money. It was done. But now you guys got to stretch it out and make a big deal out of it. So
All right.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Bruin. Councillor Firth?
I was just going to amend Councillor Stravas's motion, but he did it himself, so.
All right, thank you. So again, it is covered in the user fees as per the amended motion by Councillor Stravas. We do have an amended motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Yeah. All right, next is media inquiries. Any media inquiries whatsoever, Mr. Orwell?
We don't have any media inquiries today.
All right, thank you. With that, I need a motion to move back into closed session then, please. Motion on the table, Councillor Beckering, thank you. All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you.